to get on with that.
The Honourable David Parker.
Mr Chairman, I will respond to a couple of issues raised by the Minister and the Chair then. He asked why is it that we think that New Zealanders can afford compulsory savings through a universal KiwiSaver scheme. The truth is that New Zealand can't afford to ignore these long-term problems. New Zealand is sliding down or has slid down the rankings of the international wealth tables over recent decades. And although it's true that in the next few years there are a couple of countries that are going to pass us going down faster than we are, some of these European countries to which Bill English has referred, the truth is the countries that have done better than us do better in labour productivity. They do better in labour productivity because they have the right tax signal into the economy, and their precious investment capital goes into businesses based on the profitability of the investment rather than a tax bias. And they do better on labour productivity because they have more money to invest in their economy because they save more. Now, how is that paid for by low-income people? It's a very good question, because low-income people spend everything they earn. And that's why, allied with our policy of universal savings scheme, we had a proposal to increase the minimum wage, because an increase to the minimum wage is necessary in order to help those people save. Now, Mr English, you might laugh in the chair, but you know one of the reasons why people head to Australia is that they have got a more competitive wage structure. That competitive wage structure is born of the universal savings scheme. New Zealand would be in a similar position if an earlier national government, under one of his predecessors, the Right Honourable Robert Muldoon, hadn't abandoned an earlier Labour universal savings scheme that was designed by Roger Douglas, put in place by Norman Kirk. Mr Speaker, that's how the contributory savings scheme would be introduced, and as one of the New Zealand First contributors interjected, there is a difference between a lump sum and a contribution over time, even if the Minister of Finance doesn't get that distinction. Mr Speaker, Mr Chairman, we heard from Paul Goldsmith. Paul Goldsmith, of course, biographer of John Banks, another person who's very close to Mr Banks. He said that it's some new recipe from Labor that we were in favour of returning to surplus by 2014-2015. It's not. We campaigned upon it. We produced detailed fiscals at the time of the last election, which are the most detailed that have ever been prepared by an opposition, far more so than we had from the national government when they were in opposition. Not only that, we actually properly costed what was happening with the SOEs. The government didn't. In fact, the government didn't come clean on the fact that the SOE sales was going to make the deficit worth by $100 million per annum until this year in this very budget process, in the pre-budget fiscal update. Not only that, but under Dr Cullen, we did run 9 surpluses in a row in a time of plenty when a lot of governments around the world were not putting away money for a rainy day. New Zealand was. Every one of those budget surpluses was opposed by Bill English, every one of them. Every one of those budget surpluses was opposed by his predecessor, John Key, and by his predecessor, Don Brash. Every one of those budget surpluses are absolutely essential if you're going to run Keynesian economics. There's lots of people now favour Keynesian approach in the recession, and they're right. You know that if you have a danger of running into a deflationary spiral if you don't run a deficit, and that's why I'm not critical of Bill English for having run a deficit in the last couple of years. It was absolutely necessary. If you run surpluses for all those years, then you have the worst recession around the world since the Great Depression. It's absolutely appropriate for the government for a period to run a deficit in order to keep the economy moving. He's done that. We haven't criticised that. We criticised the shape of it. We criticised the fact 40% of his income tax cuts went to the top 10% of people. But we don't criticise the fact there has been a deficit, and New Zealand can afford that deficit for a period because for 9 years, and indeed prior national government ran surpluses during the good times so as to put money away for the tough times. In terms of welfare reform, I'm not going to put up with being lectured on welfare reform by a government that says they don't have to move on the age of eligibility for superannuation, despite the fact that 1 million people within a decade and a half, or a bit more than that, will be on superannuation, and by 2016 we'll be spending more on superannuation than the whole of vote education.
Members, the question is that vote finance stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
3 votes in favour.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 57. The ayes have it. The question is that vote Canterbury earthquake stand part